My name is Naomi Blake, but in this story, I'll be using a different name. Let's just say, for now, you can call me Naomi. I was 31 years old, working as an intake coordinator at a busy pediatric clinic in Minneapolis, when my entire life was flipped upside down by a phone call. I found out that I apparently owned a house I had never seen, and I was 3 months behind on a mortgage I had never signed. It happened on a random Wednesday afternoon. I was at my desk, buried in patient records, half listening to my coworker vent about her toddler's latest public meltdown. My cell phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. Normally, I'd let it go to voicemail. Most of those calls are just spam about my car's warranty. But something about that specific buzz, that specific number, just felt different. It didn't feel like spam. I excused myself and stepped into the quiet hallway. "This is Naomi," I said. "Miss Blake, this is Nathan from North Lakes Credit Union. I'm calling regarding your past due mortgage on the Highland Park property. You're currently 3 months delinquent." I blinked, certain I had misheard him. "I'm sorry," I stammered. "What mortgage are you talking about?" He paused, probably checking his screen. "The mortgage for $623,000 on the Highland Avenue property." For a solid 5 seconds, I couldn't speak. I lived in a cramped, rented one-bedroom apartment near Hennepin Avenue. I had no savings for a down payment, no cosigner, and definitely no delusions about owning a home in this economy. My first thought was that this had to be a scam, a very elaborate, very cruel scam. But then he read the full address. Highland Avenue. The name of the street didn't click until it slammed into me like a freight train. My older sister, Alyssa, and her husband, Gavin, had just moved into a beautiful, restored craftsman home on Highland a few months ago. I had been there once. We sat on their new patio, ate fancy mousse cake, and I admired their perfect new life. Suddenly, my entire body went cold. I ended the call as politely as my shaky voice would allow and locked myself in the staff restroom. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely hold my phone. I pulled up my credit report. The account was right there, staring back at me. My name, my social security number, my birthday. The only address listed was theirs. In that moment, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even pick up the phone to call my sister. I just stared at my own reflection in the harsh fluorescent light, watching my face shift from confusion to a cold, hard realization. This wasn't a clerical error. This wasn't a joke. Someone had stolen my entire identity to buy a $600,000 home. And deep down, in a place I didn't want to acknowledge, I already knew who. What terrified me most wasn't the debt. It was knowing that the parents who raised us would probably beg me not to do a damn thing about it. After that call, the world around me became a blur. The cheerful, cartoon-covered walls of the clinic, the sound of kids laughing in the waiting room, it all just faded into white noise. I finished my shift on autopilot, nodding and smiling when I had to, but my mind was a million miles away. That night, I sat on my worn-out green couch in my tiny apartment and just stared at the ivy crawling over my windowsill. I had raised those plants from tiny clippings, nursed them through brutal Minnesota winters, talked to them on hard nights. My little rental wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. It was simple and honest, just like the life I had built. I never had any interest in keeping up with my sister. Alyssa is 3 years older, and from the time we were kids, she was always the one in the spotlight. Homecoming queen, real estate license by 22, a husband with a finance degree. Their life was a curated Instagram feed of luxury SUVs and brunch dates. Me? I processed new patient intakes and scheduled surgeries. I owned one pair of heels and used my vacation days for dentist appointments. I never thought of myself as boring. I thought of myself as peaceful. But peace doesn't impress anyone at family dinners. Every other Sunday, we'd gather at my parents' house in St. Paul. Dad would open a bottle of wine and complain it wasn't aged enough, while Mom would serve her famous lasagna. Alyssa would always arrive late, making a grand entrance with a loud laugh and big stories. She'd look at my shoes, give a tight smile, and ask if I'd ever thought about moving somewhere more grown-up than my rental. I'd just laugh it off. It was easier than explaining that I had chosen stability over the exhausting performance of success. And now, that quiet, stable life I had built was hanging by a thread. I barely slept that night. I just lay there, wondering how long this had been planned. Had she gone through my mail when she visited? Taken pictures of my ID while I was in the kitchen helping Mom with Christmas dinner? And Gavin, he must have known. He was the one who always bragged about knowing how to make paperwork disappear. I was supposed to go to their house for dinner that coming weekend. Alyssa had texted me, "Bringing dessert. Hope you're still free to plant it for us next month." The audacity of it now made my blood run cold. They were living in a house with my name on the deed, and I hadn't even been allowed to pick out the curtains. The next day, I went straight to the credit union. A branch manager named Evan met me in a sterile conference room. He slid a folder across the table. Inside were loan documents, closing disclosures, and income statements. All of them had my name, my social, and a signature that almost looked like mine. "This was all processed online," Evan explained. "Uploaded documents, digital signatures, the income stated here is generous." He pointed to a number. $198,000 a year. I let out a hollow, breathless laugh. "I make $42,000. His face shifted. "Miss Blake, if you didn't apply for this is identity theft. You need to file a police report immediately." As I left the bank, clutching that folder like it was evidence in a murder case, I knew I had a long road ahead. The next few days were a blur of phone calls and quiet rage. I filed a fraud alert. My credit score, once a solid 726, had cratered to 542. It wasn't just the mortgage. There was a home equity line, 3 maxed-out credit cards, and a personal loan, all in my name, all linked to a fake email address that was off by 1 digit. It was easy to miss, unless you knew exactly what you were looking for. I started building my case. A friend of a friend worked in digital forensics. He pointed me to a handwriting analyst. I sent him copies of the mortgage signatures and compared them to my real signature from my nursing license and lease agreement. The verdict came back fast. "These are forged. Clever, but forged." Then came the part I wasn't proud of. I started digging. Alyssa's Instagram showed champagne and vacations, but it also showed a lifestyle that didn't match their supposed income. A college friend who worked at a luxury car dealership told me that when Alyssa tried to lease a new Mercedes, her credit was so bad the application tanked. Gavin had to pay cash. He wasn't happy about it. Their glossy, perfect marriage was fraying at the seams. But what stunned me most was the intent. When the police later investigated, they found search history from Gavin's old laptop with terms like "declare bankruptcy in someone else's name" and "how to abandon a stolen identity legally." This wasn't desperation. This was a calculated strategy. By the end of the week, I had enough to destroy them. And still, I hesitated. Not because I didn't think they deserved it, but because I knew the moment I said the word police, my parents would ask me to stay quiet for the sake of family. Sunday dinner came. My mom texted to ask if I wanted her to pick up that mousse cake I liked. I told her not to bother. Alyssa already had dessert covered. I spent an hour getting dressed, not because I cared how I looked, but because I needed armor. I chose a navy blouse and dark slacks, professional, unshakable. The manila folder in my bag felt like it weighed 100 pounds. When I arrived, everything was the same. Dad in his recliner with a glass of wine, Mom in her apron, Gavin helping with the garlic bread, and Alyssa 5 minutes late, hair perfect, smiling like she didn't have a care in the world. "Naomi," she chirped, "you look so put together, promotion I haven't heard about." I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. No promotion, just dressing for the occasion. Dinner was a blur of small talk. My brother Sam and his wife chatted about their renovation. Alyssa bragged about the golden hour in her sunroom. My mom laughed. My dad poured more wine. The mousse cake sat in the fridge, waiting like a time bomb. As the plates were cleared, I reached into my bag and wrapped my hand around the folder. My chest was tight, but not from fear. There was only clarity now. I waited until the table was quiet, forks down, glasses full, then I spoke. "There's something I need to talk to you all about." My mom looked up, smiling. "Of course, honey, everything okay?" Alyssa leaned in, smirking. "Is this about dadding? Did someone finally make you cancel your Friday night plant watering routine? The table chuckled. I set the folder down. The sound it made was soft, but the silence that followed was deafening. This is a police report, I said. I filed it 3 days ago. My dad straightened. Police, what happened? I looked directly at Alyssa. Identity theft, fraud, the purchase of a home using my name, a mortgage I didn't sign. Her smile flickered. Naomi, what are you talking about? I'm talking about your house on Highland Avenue, the one you're living in. My mom gasped, but that's their new place. I nodded. It is, and according to the paperwork, it's mine. The mortgage, the credit lines, the debt, it's all under my name. Alyssa let out a sharp, brittle laugh. That's ridiculous. How would I even do that? Forgery, I said calmly. False income claims, a fake email address, IP addresses from your old condo. Do you need more? Gavin stood up, knocking his chair. We don't have to do this here. My father's voice cut through like a blade. Sit down, Gavin. Alyssa's face had gone pale. She looked at the papers but didn't touch them. Finally, she whispered, it was supposed to be temporary. You stole my identity. You weren't using it, she snapped, her voice cracking. You live in a shoebox, you make nothing, we just needed time. Don't, I said, my voice low. Don't you dare turn this into a rescue mission. You built a life out of mine. Gavin rubbed his face. I told you this would come back on us. My mom stood, trembling. Alyssa, tell me this isn't true. Alyssa looked at her like a child caught in a lie too big to deny. We were drowning. You all expected so much. The house, the image, we couldn't keep up. My dad stood too. So you buried your sister to stay afloat. There were tears now. I didn't think it would go this far. You were planning to file bankruptcy in my name, I said quietly. You were never going to fix anything. The room fell silent. Finally, my father spoke. Get out, both of you. Dad. No, he said. We'll deal with the fallout, but you won't do it under this roof. Alyssa started to say something, then stopped. Gavin took her arm, and they left. The front door clicked shut, and the silence that followed was heavier than anything I had ever felt. The fallout was swift. By Monday, the local news had picked it up. Prominent realtor and financial advisor under investigation for identity theft. The article didn't name me, but anyone who knew us could connect the dots. My phone exploded with messages. I turned off notifications and left it in a drawer. My mom called that Wednesday. Her voice was thin. Your dad won't go to his golf group. He can't face them. I'm sorry to hear that, I said evenly. She's still your sister, Naomi. I stayed quiet. She made a mistake, but there must be a way to handle this quietly. There it was, the word they all kept dancing around. Quietly. I had been quiet my whole life, and it had led me here. She didn't make a mistake, Mom. She made a series of deliberate decisions. She had every chance to stop. She could go to prison. I know. And the kids, she paused. Think about them. Do you want them to grow up visiting their mother through glass? It was the first time I wavered. Harper and Reed, 5 and 7, innocent, bright, funny, did they deserve to pay for their parents' crimes? But then I thought about the search history on Gavin's laptop, the fake email, the deliberate plan to leave me with nothing. Justice wasn't revenge, it was consequence. A few weeks later, the district attorney's office called. They were moving forward with formal charges. They asked if I wanted to provide a statement. I said yes. That night, I got one last text from my mom. You have every right to be angry, but please don't let this ruin all of us. I typed and deleted 5 replies before finally sending one sentence. She did that, not me. 9 months after my name was stolen to build someone else's dream, I signed my own mortgage. My name, my choice, my terms, no forged income, no lies, just me, a pen, and a truth I had earned the hard way. The irony wasn't lost on me. My sister had stolen my identity to buy a life she couldn't afford, and now I was doing the very thing she claimed I wasn't capable of. I bought a modest 2-bedroom in Bloomington. The yard was patchy, the appliances old, the mailbox dented. But it was mine, paid for with real money, real credit, and a peace I had fought for. Alyssa and Gavin pleaded guilty. 18 months in federal prison for her, 12 for him. Their perfect life collapsed under the weight of court records and public judgment. I didn't attend the sentencing. I was too busy rebuilding what they tried to destroy. When I moved in, my friend brought champagne and a welcome mat that read, "Not today, identity thieves." My parents came separately. My mom brought lasagna. My dad handed me a fern in a clay pot and said, "I didn't say it before, but you were right." It wasn't an apology, but it was something. A few weeks later, I got a letter addressed in pink marker, sealed with a unicorn sticker. It was from Harper. "Dear Aunt Naomi, I know Mommy did something really bad. I still love her, but I love you too. I drew a flower for your new house because Mommy says you grow good plants. Can I come visit one day?" I stared at that note for a long time. The betrayal had nearly broken me. But this wasn't a story about ruin. It was a story about planting new roots. I may never fully forgive my sister, but I don't need to live in that shadow anymore. This house, flawed as it is mine. It was built on truth, not theft, on boundaries, not guilt. And for the first time in my life, I feel safe inside my own name.